Brain Burst, the guide to neuro-rewiring for smashing failure patterns and achieving unstoppable success. Author, Vahid Zekavati. Copyright, VMZ Production. Introduction. Have you ever bitterly questioned why the path to success feels like running a race with your legs tied while others sprint effortlessly to the finish line? That feeling of despair is like staring at a locked treasure chest, the key right before your eyes, but your brain refuses to see it. This book is not a moral lesson or a dusty theory. It is a technical manual for operating the most complex hardware in the world, your mind. We are not here for fleeting motivation or empty slogans. We must embrace the stark truth. If your mind's core system is wired for failure, no amount of trying harder will ever help you. The problem is not your willpower, it is your faulty wiring. This is the dark awareness. Your mind is currently working against you. Prepare to unlock it. The essence of the mind lock is simple: disorganization. How can a biological supercomputer like the human brain constantly drive you towards decisions that are directly opposed to your deepest goals and aspirations? The secret lies in negative neuroplasticity, the brain's innate ability to reinforce pathways that lead to destructive habits and failure. Most people waste energy fighting the symptoms of the lock, like procrastination and poor focus, while the root cause remains the underlying structure of the brain itself. They resort to self-blame, oblivious to the fact that the only true solution is deep mental surgery to change its architecture. This is the moment of accountability, accepting that we are caught in a neuro-failure pattern. The first step to freedom is understanding this internal prison's layout. Brain Burst is more than just a book. It is a 7-stage neuro-rewiring protocol designed to make you unstoppable. Across these chapters, we will systematically confront the 7 main locks preventing your productivity, creativity, and effective decision-making. We begin by accepting the harsh truths, dark awareness, and then immediately ignite the spark of awakening with precise, actionable techniques for active brain reconstruction. This guide will show you how sleep impacts your financial decisions, how to use white noise to optimize memory, and how to permanently destroy the illusion of multitasking. The ultimate goal is to achieve unstoppable success, a state where every choice your brain makes automatically aligns with your highest potential and goals. This book hands you the key.
Chapter 1. The Nature of the Mind Lock. Understanding Negative Neuroplasticity. Admit it. You know that success is not an accident, it's a system. If your mind's neural system is pre-wired for self-sabotage and failure, the harder you try with sheer willpower, the faster you will be pulled back to square one. You have heard the brain can change. That's neuroplasticity. Unfortunately, this is a double-edged sword that governs your fate. Your main mind lock resides here. Your brain is equally adept at solidifying neural pathways that lead to destructive, broken habits as it is at creating positive ones. This phenomenon, which we call negative neuroplasticity, is the core engine of all your procrastination and chronic failures. Negative neuroplasticity means your brain is actively strengthening useless and detrimental connections. Every time you surrender to procrastination, every time you check your phone instead of starting that vital task, and every time you engage in self-pity after a setback, you are essentially running a failure drill. Your mind has achieved mastery in performing actions that run contrary to your stated goals. This repetitive behavior should not be viewed as a fixed character flaw. It is a deeply ingrained neurological habit that manifests as lack of motivation or fear of starting. The brain seeks the fastest, lowest energy route to reward, and that path often leads straight to self-sabotage. The most frequently asked question is, why can't I just start the work when I know it is important? The answer lies in your brain's flawed reward system. The locked mind instinctively opts for instant, cheap rewards, the dopamine hit from a social media notification or a quick, mindless scroll, over the harder, delayed gratification of achieving a significant goal. The lock operates under a simple mantra: the path that requires the least energy and offers the quickest reward is the best one, even if it drives you toward ruin. Our task is to reverse engineer this flawed reward system using cognitive techniques to make the correct, difficult actions more neurologically attractive. It is a common and damaging misconception that achieving success requires constant motivation. That is a lie and a cognitive trap. Motivation is an emotion, transient and unreliable. What you truly need is neurodiscipline. By this we mean the strong, automatic neural pathways that have been intentionally built to drive you to the correct action without needing a good feeling to start. If you have to engage in a mental battle every single day just to begin the right task, your mind lock is still fully engaged, draining your cognitive energy reserves. The successful mind is an ordered, disciplined machine, not a battlefield of conflicting desires. Another classic lock that traps millions is overthinking. Many mistakenly believe this is a sign of high intelligence or meticulousness, but overthinking is truly the signature of a disorganized brain unable to separate the act of deciding from the act of doing. The locked mind is caught in endless neural loops of analysis that produce no actionable outcome. Massive cognitive energy is consumed, yet forward motion is zero. This lock keeps you perpetually in a state of endless preparation, a comfortable illusion of progress without ever forcing you to step into the uncomfortable arena of true action. The role of poor sleep in maintaining the mind lock is consistently underestimated. People mistakenly believe that sleeping less is equivalent to working harder, a fatal strategic error. Inadequate sleep directly impairs the function of the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for logical decision-making, emotional regulation, and complex planning. A fatigued and compromised brain will always default to the easiest, most emotional, and therefore the worst choice. This is a physical neural lock that fundamentally degrades the quality of every decision you make, from diet to finance. Fixing your sleep is non-negotiable for success. To begin the unlocking process, you must be brave enough to confront your inner resistance. This is the subtle, whispering voice in your head that says, "Not right now, maybe later," or "You're too tired today." That voice is the powerful echo of the negative neural pathways that have been reinforced over years of inaction. Our core objective is to use cognitive tools to logically silence this inner critic or procrastinator and replace it with strong neural pathways dedicated to immediate, consistent action. The battle for your mind is essentially a battle of conscious awareness versus deep-seated neurological habit. The distraction of multitasking is another dangerous and pervasive lock. You may proudly claim to handle multiple things simultaneously, but the grim reality is that this action is merely a rapid, costly task switching. Every time your brain jumps from one task to another, it incurs a neurological switching cost that drastically reduces overall effectiveness. The lock deceives you into believing you are being efficient, when in truth you are fragmenting your cognitive resources and preventing any valuable deep work from being completed. Single tasking is the first principle of true neurological discipline. The clear conclusion of this chapter is a powerful mandate. The first and most crucial step is to accept neural responsibility. As long as you attribute your failures to bad luck, a lack of willpower, or environmental factors, the lock remains sealed. You, and only you, are responsible for actively rebuilding and rewiring the neural pathways in your brain. This is the single reliable path toward a mind burst and the release of your true potential. Today you embrace the dark awareness. Now you are ready to start the breakage. One final question for deep reflection before moving on. If your daily habits are exactly what your brain designed for the least effort, how much of your life is truly being controlled by you? How much are you willing to sacrifice the easy, worthless activities to break this neurological dependency?
Chapter 2. The Battle Against Information Overload, Survival Prioritization. The perennial, painful question people ask is, why does my to-do list never shrink? Why am I always busy but never truly progressing? The answer is blunt. You are trapped in the quicksand of information and task overload. The locked mind has lost the crucial ability to distinguish between the vitals, critical tasks, and the noise, low-impact activities. To escape, you must adopt survival prioritization, not a decorative, endless to-do list. Here, we wield the 80-20 Pareto principle as a sharp weapon. Only 20% of your efforts produce 80% of your meaningful results. The truth is more unsettling than you imagine. A significant majority of the tasks you perform daily are simply filler tasks. These are activities designed only to keep you busy, creating a false sense of importance and productivity, but they contribute nothing to your long-term goals. The disorganized and locked mind welcomes these tasks because they require minimal energy and low focus. To unlock your productivity, you must cultivate the courage to say no to over 90% of the ideas and tasks in your head, even if that feels initially anxiety-inducing or uncomfortable. To establish this mental survival filter, you must pose a powerful filtering question. Which single item on my list, if left undone, would severely and negatively impact my professional or personal life 3 months from now? This question is a brutal filter that immediately separates the vital few from the trivial many. If not doing a task today carries no serious long-term consequence, then that task is not a priority for this moment and must be ruthlessly discarded or delegated. The Pareto principle, 80-20, is your indispensable survival tool. It posits that 80% of your desired positive outcomes and high-value results stem from only 20% of the effort you expend. Survival prioritization means applying this principle ruthlessly to pinpoint that critical 20%. This is the cognitive shock that transforms productivity from a messy, stressful scramble into a focused, highly effective hunt. You must learn the central lesson: work less, but with exponentially higher impact. Traditional tools like the Eisenhower matrix, urgent, important, are effective, but most people fail because of the mind lock. They spend all their time in the urgent, non-important quadrant, e.g., instant email replies, minor requests. The liberated and organized mind spends the majority of its time in the non-urgent, important quadrant, e.g., strategic planning, long-term skill acquisition, and system building. The fundamental difference between a person who constantly reacts and one who creates is entirely defined by this allocation of cognitive energy. In this process of neural reconstruction, we must consciously implement deep thinking time into your daily schedule. This is a dedicated hour or more for your brain to work without distraction on your most significant problem or opportunity. Deep thinking is not urgent, but in terms of long-term leverage, it is the most critical activity you can engage in. This act is a form of neuro-rewiring that compels your focus onto depth rather than superficial activity, directly overriding the scattering effects of the mind lock. One of the most insidious forms of procrastination is endless preparation. This is the pattern where you spend hours organizing your desk, reading one more article, or buying the perfect tool, rather than starting the actual work. This is a subtle form of self-deception that the disorganized mind loves. The golden question here is, am I actually doing the work right now, or am I merely preparing to do the work? To break this lock, you must prioritize action over preparation at every single turn.
To enforce this structure onto your brain, you must implement time blocking. Instead of a floating to-do list that can be tackled whenever, you must reserve specific, non-negotiable slots on your calendar for your 20% most vital tasks. Treat these time blocks like highly important meetings with the CEO. They cannot be canceled. This structured approach forces the necessary order and discipline onto your brain, pulling it out of its comfortable state of disorganization and scatter. The locked brain consistently overestimates the effort required to start a task, fearing the high cognitive energy cost. To overcome this initial resistance, deploy the 5-minute rule. Simply commit to working on your vital task for a minimum of 5 minutes. Breaking this initial resistance allows your brain to initiate momentum. In over 90% of cases, you will continue working far beyond the 5-minute mark. This simple psychological hack is the key to breaking the starting lock. The conclusion of this chapter: survival prioritization demands conscious sacrifice. You must courageously eliminate many things that you feel you should do in order to create the neurological space for the things that will actually deliver results. Do not let busyness and high activity create the mere illusion of progress. The spark of awakening here is accepting the Pareto principle and committing to laser focus on the vital 20%.
Chapter 3: Escaping Repetitive Rut, Unleashing Nonlinear Creativity. The famous story of Thomas Edison and his thousands of failures is not just a motivational anecdote, it is a lesson in brain engineering. Your mind lock forces you to think about a problem using the same, established, and ultimately failing method you used before. This is the dangerous trap of the repetitive rut. True creativity does not burst forth from chaos. It emerges from an organized, structured mind that deliberately creates the space for nonlinear thinking to occur. In this chapter, we learn how to use your logical, structured brain to consciously introduce the necessary creative disarray required for breakthrough ideas. People constantly ask, how can I become more creative? The answer is counterintuitive. It is not about thinking more. It is about thinking less and sensing more. Creativity thrives at the intersection of seemingly unrelated ideas. The locked mind suppresses this intersection because it fears the discomfort of the illogical and prefers to remain within the safety of established patterns. To unlock this, we must intentionally place the brain in scenarios where it is forced to build novel connections between disparate concepts, overriding the internal resistance to newness. The first step in breaking the repetitive rut is understanding the brain's diffuse mode. Focused thinking, focus mode, is excellent for solving known problems, but the diffuse mode, when the mind is relaxed, like during a walk or shower, is where it forms those improbable, paradigm-shifting connections. The lock prevents this because most people never allow their brains to truly enter the diffuse state, filling every moment with stimulation. We must actively schedule and protect this time of mental white space to allow the brain's background processing to synthesize new solutions. The practice of morning journaling is a form of deep magic for smashing repetitive thinking. Immediately upon waking, before your internal censor, the logical mind, fully activates, write down anything and everything that comes to mind. This act flushes out the residual mundane thoughts from the day before and allows for the emergence of nonlinear, unexpected ideas. This process successfully liberates the mind from being locked into the logical constraints and the fear of failure from the previous day. We must actively seek out foreign inputs. If your career is in technology, read a book on horticulture. If you work in finance, visit an art exhibition. These seemingly unrelated informational inputs are the essential fuel for your creative engine. Your brain will inevitably be triggered to find a unifying pattern in what appears to be a random collection of data, causing the necessary spark for novel thought. The locked mind avoids this exposure, fearing the complexity of the unknown. Why do the best ideas often strike when you are away from your desk? Because the brain is not under the pressure, the lock, to have a good idea right now. To unleash creativity, you must deliberately remove the pressure to perform creatively. Schedule specific time for bad idea generation, where you intentionally create illogical, disastrous, or conventionally flawed concepts. This reassures your brain that the objective is simply idea fluency, not quality, effectively bypassing the fear of failure. Another common question is, how do I overcome imposter syndrome in my creative work? This syndrome is a lock that whispers, you are not good enough to create something genuinely original. Your creativity is inherently unique because it is a distinct synthesis of your specific life experiences. To break this lock, study the work of others extensively, but resolve never to directly copy. Instead, let your mind perform its own unique blending and remixing of inspirations. One of the greatest locks on creative output is the fear of judgment. Your brain is hardwired to avoid shame and ridicule. To unlock this, embrace the principle that your first draft, idea, or prototype must always be intentionally ugly and incomplete. This simple declaration reassures your mind that quality is irrelevant at the initial stage. Only the flow of the idea matters. This low-stakes starting point is often the difference between creation and stagnation. Implement the technique of structured solitary brainstorming. Instead of just writing a linear list of ideas, take a central topic and visually map out dozens of seemingly unrelated branches using a mind map. This visual exercise forces the brain to move beyond linear order and actively strengthen its networked associative connections. The act of drawing and visual linking is a powerful cognitive technique to enforce nonlinear thinking patterns. The conclusion of this chapter is clear. Creativity is not a mystical gift. It is a deliberately planned operation. You must outsmart your default brain setting and intentionally expose it to unexpected environments and concepts. This proactive introduction of the unfamiliar is the spark of awakening that allows for an innovative, unstoppable mindset to emerge.
Chapter 4. The Multitasking Illusion. Engineering Laser Focus. I confess, you probably believe you are adept at multitasking, but this is a grand illusion that actively commits productivity murder. Multitasking is not efficiency. It is merely expensive and rapid task switching. To break the focus lock, you must first eliminate this illusion entirely. Laser focus is not a gift. It is an acquired, engineered skill achieved through strict environmental management techniques and the rigorous use of focused time blocks. This chapter shows you how to eliminate the dopamine-driven fragmentation that has hijacked your attention. The ubiquitous question is, why can't I concentrate for an extended period? The underlying reason is that your brain has become addicted to the dopamine hit of task switching. Every time you check your phone, a small, cheap dose of reward is released. This instant gratification addiction is the root of your focus lock. Your brain has learned to prioritize the low-effort, immediate reward over the higher-effort, profound reward of deep accomplishment requiring a disciplined detox. To unlock focus, you must drastically increase the starting cost for distractions. This means making the choice to get distracted physically difficult. Placing your phone in another room, turning off all notifications, and closing every unnecessary browser tab. The higher the friction your brain has to overcome to access a distraction, the less likely it is to be tempted. Control the environment, control the mind. This is the first practical lesson in brain discipline. Our goal is to reach a state of deep work, uninterrupted, highly concentrated effort on a cognitively demanding task. This state is where high-value, non-replicable work is produced. However, the locked mind resists deep work because it demands high cognitive energy. You must strategically prepare your brain to enter this state by incorporating a startup ritual like preparing a specific drink, putting on headphones, or 5 minutes of focused breathing to signal to the brain that the deep work period has begun. Implement the 20-minute focus rule to train your brain's endurance. Force yourself to work on one vital task for exactly 20 minutes with 0 interruptions. After this initial success, the brain can incrementally extend this focus to longer intervals, such as 45 or 90 minutes. This is a form of cognitive conditioning that gradually strengthens the pathways responsible for sustained attention, counteracting years of fragmented behavior. One of the largest hidden distractions is the internal distraction, the sudden thoughts like, "I have a great idea for that other project," or "I must pay that bill today." To counter this mental lock, always keep a distraction capture journal nearby. Immediately write the thought down, externalizing it from your working memory, and then instantly return your attention to the primary task. This honors the thought without allowing it to derail your focus. Just as we established in the creativity chapter, scheduled diffuse time is essential for focus recovery. After a deep work block, for example 90 minutes, take a short dedicated break, even 5 minutes, to release your mind. This break allows the cognitive resources to recharge and consolidate the information processed during the deep work period, preparing the brain for the next intensive cycle. This is not a distraction, it is a vital part of the focus cycle. Use white noise or instrumental, non-lyrical music strategically. These auditory environments work to mask the sudden and disruptive environmental noises like street sounds or office chatter, and help your brain create a uniform, predictable background for sustained concentration. This is a simple but powerful tool for providing the necessary auditory shield required to break the noise lock in your workspace. Laser focus ultimately boils down to the simple, non-negotiable understanding that only one thing matters now. If a new task or request arrives, capture it, log it to be processed later, but strictly maintain your focus on the task currently in front of you until its completion. Giving in to the immediate temptation of the novel stimulus is a clear surrender in the battle for your concentration. The conclusion of this chapter: kill the multitasking illusion to birth your laser focus. The organization of your environment and your time is a direct mirror of the organization within your mind. Controlling your environment is the prerequisite for controlling your attention.
Chapter 5. Memory, the kingdom you fail to utilize. How can you effortlessly recall dialogues from an old movie, yet struggle to remember your new colleague's name? The locked mind is fundamentally inefficient at encoding and retrieving information. Memory is not a static vault, it is a dynamic muscle that either strengthens with deliberate practice or wastes away with neglect. We must learn how to fully utilize this kingdom of memory as the fuel for better, faster, and more informed decision-making. The common query is, how can I improve my memory? The answer is not through rote repetition. Memory is powerfully strengthened through meaningful association and emotion. The brain instantly discards dry, unexciting information, but it obsessively retains anything linked to a strong visual image, a compelling narrative, or a high emotional charge. You must actively inject your learning with personal meaning to break the memory lock. The memory lock is rooted in the failure to use spatial visualization. Ancient techniques like the memory palace or method of Lovchi harness this power. You link new pieces of information to familiar locations in your mind, for example, your living room or the route to work.
This process forces your brain to engage its spatial processing areas, which are far more powerful for retention than mere linguistic memory. To unlock effective learning, you must employ the triad of learning. 1. Input, reading or hearing. 2. Processing, reflection or mind mapping. 3. Output, teaching it or explaining it to someone else. If the output stage is absent, your brain assumes the information is non-critical and deletes it. True retention occurs when you are forced to retrieve and articulate the information coherently. The locked mind receives information passively, like listening to a podcast while driving. The liberated mind engages with information actively. During any learning session, you must deliberately ask critical questions, take handwritten notes, and attempt to rephrase the concepts in your own unique language. Passive consumption is the enemy of encoding, and active engagement is the key to memory power. The importance of spaced repetition cannot be overstated. The brain naturally forgets new data over time. Instead of cramming knowledge in one long, exhausting session, review the information at increasingly longer intervals over several days or weeks. This strategic spacing gives the brain the necessary time to consolidate the neural connections, making the retrieval pathways stronger and more stable. Physical well-being is a silent lock on memory. Dehydration, chronically poor sleep, and a poor diet directly impair the brain's capacity to store and recall information efficiently. Treating your body with respect is a prerequisite for a highly functional memory. Taking care of your physical health is literally taking care of your cognitive machine. One of the worst modern habits is the complete reliance on external memory, digital notes, calendars, phone reminders. While these tools are convenient, they make your brain lazy. A powerful exercise: challenge yourself to memorize phone numbers or your daily tasks without any digital assistance for a short period. This simple practice rebuilds the crucial internal memory muscle. To strengthen the retrieval power of your memory, employ active recall. After reading a section of this book, close it and try to verbally or mentally recall everything you just learned without looking back. This process is cognitively demanding, but it aggressively reinforces the neural pathways responsible for retrieving information when you need it most, such as during a critical discussion or decision. The conclusion of this chapter: memory is the kingdom whose information is the essential fuel for smart decision-making. By intelligently leveraging emotion, visualization, and structured repetition, you smash the memory lock and gain an extraordinarily powerful tool necessary for unstoppable success.
Chapter 6. Shattering Cognitive Biases, Rewiring the Brain for Better Decisions. One of the most powerful mind locks is cognitive biases. These are unconscious, systematic errors in thinking that the brain developed to save energy, yet they consistently lead to disastrous decision-making. Biases act as distorting filters, preventing you from seeing reality as it truly is. To achieve success, you must rewire your brain to doubt the default settings in every major choice. The million-dollar question: why do I repeatedly make the same mistakes? Because biases drive you toward confirmation bias. You subconsciously seek out and give more weight only to information that already confirms your existing beliefs, while ruthlessly dismissing or ignoring contradictory evidence. This selective filtering is a neurological self-deception that keeps you trapped in your current reality, regardless of external data. To break this confirmation lock, you must become consciously your own devil's advocate. Before any major decision,
Dedicate time to writing down every reason why this decision might fail. This forced process compels your brain to actively search for conflicting evidence, thereby neutralizing the deeply ingrained confirmation bias and fostering a more balanced viewpoint. Another paralyzing lock is the sunk cost fallacy. This is the internal voice that insists, because I have already invested so much time or money, I must continue, even if the project is clearly failing. The liberated mind always makes decisions based on future potential, not past investments. This fallacy is a powerful neurological anchor to the past. To overcome the sunk cost fallacy, ask yourself one simple, brutal question. If I were starting today, would I still choose to pursue this path? If the answer is no, you must have the courage to cut your losses and pivot immediately. This act is a powerful form of neuro-rewiring that establishes a precedence for logical, future-oriented decision-making. The common bias of anchoring is also a major lock. In negotiations or judgments, the first number or piece of data presented, the anchor, disproportionately influences all subsequent judgments. The locked mind relies too heavily on this initial reference point, even when the data is irrelevant or clearly manipulated. To counter the anchoring bias, you must always prepare a range of options and reference points in advance. Instead of simply accepting or rejecting the initial anchor, respond immediately with a strong, logical counter-anchor based on your independent research. This action shifts the focus away from the initial lock. The availability heuristic represents another major cognitive lock. We rely too heavily on information that is easily accessible in our memory, such as recent emotionally charged news stories or personal experiences, even if that information is not statistically representative of the entire reality. This causes exaggerated fear or irrational optimism. To break the availability lock, you must aggressively seek out hard data and reliable statistics, not just stories. Statistics often contradict the raw emotional intuition of the locked brain. Making decisions based on robust data rather than anecdotal emotional memory is the ultimate sign of a disciplined, organized mind. The conclusion of this chapter: biases are mental shortcuts that constantly lead you astray. Rewiring your brain for better decisions means implementing systems to question the automatic. You must train yourself to make choices not based on how you feel or what seems easiest, but on a logical, objective assessment of the evidence.
Chapter 7. Practical Solutions and Techniques. Creating an Unbreakable Order. You began your journey in dark awareness, accepting that your mind was wired for failure. Now, with the final tools in hand, it is time to implement the practical techniques for building an unbreakable order. This chapter is your direct action roadmap for the neuro-rewiring of your entire operating system. Technique 1. The 90-minute no Wi-Fi block, deep work. Schedule 90 minutes every day for your single most important task. Turn off all notifications, disconnect the internet, and eliminate all potential interruptions. Your brain requires these uninterrupted periods to execute the deep, concentrated work necessary for high-level outcomes. Technique 2. The two-list rule for prioritization. Instead of one giant list, maintain two lists. 1. The 3 critical tasks of today, survival list. 2. The non-critical daily chores. Force your brain to focus exclusively on completing the first list before even glancing at the second one. Technique 3. The 2-minute stress meditation. Chronic stress is the core factor that re-engages the mind lock.
For just 2 minutes a day, sit in silence and focus purely on your breath. This simple practice strengthens the prefrontal cortex and dramatically improves your ability to manage and regulate emotional impulses during decision-making. Technique 4. The shutdown ritual. Before finishing work each day, dedicate 5 minutes to writing down the next day's 3 critical tasks. This simple action signals to your brain that it can officially rest, preventing continuation thought that often disrupts sleep and recovery. Technique 5. The information diet. Ruthlessly control your brain's inputs. Designate specific, limited times for checking email and social media, and adhere to them strictly. Outside of those blocks, refuse to look. This ensures your cognitive resources are spent processing high-value rather than low-value information. Technique 6. The hour before rule. 1 hour before going to sleep, turn off all screens, phone, laptop, TV. The blue light suppresses melatonin production. High-quality restorative sleep is the single most powerful tool for neuroorganization and actively unlocking your brain's full capacity. Technique 7. Active feedback review. Once a week, review the outcomes of your major decisions and actively assess whether a cognitive bias was involved. This reflective process powerfully reinforces positive neuroplasticity and structurally improves your future judgment skills. Technique 8. Externalize memory system. Immediately record all dates, appointments, and tasks into one single trusted external system, calendar or task app. This frees up your brain's limited working memory to focus solely on thinking and problem-solving rather than on simply remembering things. Technique 9. The click-free workspace. Organize your environment to eliminate any object that could cause a mental click of distraction. This means your work surface is only for work, not for eating, personal items, or casual phone checking. The visual environment dictates mental focus. Technique 10. Embrace imperfection in starting. To shatter procrastination, give your brain explicit permission for your first output to be terrible or incomplete. The goal is simply to start, not to achieve perfection. This single cognitive permission removes the greatest neural barrier to action. Conclusion. You began your journey in dark awareness, accepting that your mind was wired for failure. Now you stand at the threshold of creating an unbreakable order. You have identified and disarmed every major lock on your productivity, memory, and decision-making. Unlocking your mind is not a single event. It is a permanent commitment to the conscious, disciplined neuro-reconstruction of your entire being.